I'm Father J. Bryan Hehir. I'm the president of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Boston, and I'm a professor on the faculty of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. I've been asked to address the question of how the Catholic Church in the United States at the national level thinks about social and cultural change as the context for its ministry, and how it ought to think about organizational structure within the Church in order to fulfill that ministry. When one is asked to speak about the national institutions in American Catholicism, the first point to make is the primacy of the importance of the diocese and the parish. In other words, levels beneath the national level. In the Catholic Church, the diocese is the basic organizational unit of organization in the church system. Canonically and pastorally, the diocese holds primacy of importance. Experientially, for Catholics, the parish is the place where they find the church, experience the church, and live out their lives as Catholics. Those dimensions of the church's life are being addressed in other panels. Having indicated that the primacy of importance lies at the diocesan and pastoral level, what then can be said about the national level of the Church's life? What is the need for national institutions, and what role do national institutions fulfill and play? I think the need for national institutions is evident when one understands the size and complexity of American society. The Church in the United States covers every territorial inch of the defined territory of this country. And so we spread across this vast country, and we seek to minister in every place within it. And the society that we face here is perhaps the most complex society known in the world today. The institutional, organizational complexity of American society is an ongoing opportunity and challenge for the Church to face, but it requires that we bring together the experience of parishes and dioceses in some coherent national whole. What do the national institutions do for the life of the Church? I think three things. There is first a public role. At the national level, the Church must have a voice. It is a voice we should use, on the one hand, on behalf of others who perhaps have no voice or little voice in the society, particularly the poor and the vulnerable. Secondly, it is a voice we need at times to articulate both our message, the goals of our ministry, and our role in this society. And thirdly, we need a voice at times to speak in defense of the Church when criticism, valid or otherwise, is made of the life of the Church. The second role institutions play, besides being a public voice, is an institutional role. National institutions help set a strategic direction for the Church in the United States, an overarching direction which frames the work of dioceses and parishes. The third role that national institutions play is an intellectual role. That is to say, gathering information and interpreting it. Gathering information about the broad social and cultural trends this conference is concerned with, which constitute the context in which the Church's ministry is lived out. But simply gathering data is not adequate. It is necessary to interpret the data, to assess it, to ask what kind of challenge or opportunity different trends and characteristics in American society hold for the life of the Church. So, to summarize where we've been so far, the primacy of importance organizationally is diocesan and parochial, but there is an indispensable role for the national institutions. Having identified the roles that the national institutions play in American Catholicism, a role of voice, strategic direction, and interpretation, the question that needs to be asked now is the condition of our national institutions. And here the message, I think, is complex and to some degree mixed. First, I would say there has been a decline in the role of the National Conference of Bishops. It is a vitally important institution that does extraordinarily important work. But I would have to say over the last 20 years, in my judgment, there has been a decline in the ability of the National Conference precisely to present a unified national voice to the country. This conference perhaps could examine the reasons for that decline. It has been a matter of a decline in degree, not a collapse in any sense of the term, but I would say that there is a gap between the role that the National Conference can and should play in articulating a unified national voice and providing strategic direction and the role it presently does play in the life of the Church. On the other hand, a positive development, another theme of this conference, the role of the laity in the life of the Church. A positive theme is the enormously significant rise of lay leadership in major national Catholic institutions, particularly the institutions of education, social service, and healthcare. In the last 30 years, we have seen a transformation of these institutions as they have been taken over, in a good sense of the term, by lay people coming to fulfill their role of leadership in the Church. Thirdly, there is the complexity of the situation we face as we seek to speak to American society and fulfill our role. Catholic social teaching is used by large institutions and organizations and individuals outside the Catholic Church as a source of ideas on questions of justice and peace, human rights, and war and peace. Catholic teaching in other areas of life, vital to the Church itself, has a harder time finding acceptance in American society, particularly in the area of biomedical research and biomedical issues. The Catholic position, which is articulated, has a more difficult time finding widespread acceptance. This does not mean we should not teach it. It just means that there is a certain differentiation in our ability to speak to others in American society about the ministry we seek to carry out. The final point to be made as we think about our national institutions is to take into consideration the erosion of confidence that has occurred among Catholics in the institution of the Church over the last 4 or 5 years. The events in the Church which have been discussed at length in this conference are events which have created a crisis of public trust. That crisis needs to be overcome if we are to be able to use a national voice to plan with effective strategic direction and to interpret both the life of the society and the life of the Church in a mutually positive fashion.